To Ciara McGeehan, always a brilliant guest, and there is loads to chat to her about. There's an unusual summer coming up included. All athletes really are going to be thrown by the fact that there's World Championships, and then if you're in Europe, suddenly there's European Championships just a couple of weeks after that, because there were delays with the Worlds last year on account of COVID and the Olympics. So it's a very busy summer, and she has the Commonwealth Games all in the space of about 6 weeks. So we'll chat to Ciara McGeehan about that and more besides at 7:30. Wednesday night rugby, Keith Wood and James Collin over coaching with Toulon, now been in France for the past 8 years or so. So James Collin is going to join us after 8 o'clock. Dan McDonnell on the football show. Jonathan Wilson will join us as well to discuss the developing ownership situation at Chelsea and Everton. Roman Abramovich has released a statement this evening. The club is very much officially for sale. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. We have Richie McCormack with us. Hey, Richie.
Joe, how are you?
Very well. Mick McCarthy here in studio.
Hey, Joe.
Might start with this Roman Abramovich statement. I don't know how many statements he's released across his tenure. I wouldn't think too many. So Roman Abramovich says, I would like to address the speculation in media over the past few days in relation to my ownership of Chelsea FC. As I've stated before, I've always taken decisions with the club's best interest at heart. In the current situation, I have therefore taken the decision to sell the club, as I believe this is in the best interest of the club, the fans, the employees, as well as the club's sponsors and partners. He goes on to say, the sale of the club will not be fast-tracked. I will follow due process. I will not be asking for any loans to be repaid. This has never been about business nor money for me, but about pure passion for the game and club. Moreover, I've instructed my team to set up a charitable foundation where all net proceeds from the sale will be donated. The foundation will be for the benefit of all victims of the war in Ukraine. This includes providing critical funds towards the urgent and immediate need of victims, as well as supporting the long-term work of recovery. Goes on to say, finally, please know this has been an incredibly difficult decision to make, and it pains me to part with the club in this manner. However, I do believe it's in the best interest of the club. I hope that I will be able to visit Stamford Bridge one last time to say goodbye to all of you in person. It has been a privilege of a lifetime to be part of Chelsea FC, and I'm proud of all our joint achievements. Chelsea Football Club and its supporters will always be in my heart. Thank you, Roman. So Chelsea is very much up for sale. Extraordinary development. He was clearly a very, very worried man last Saturday when he handed over the stewardship, as it was then in care, to the trustees. And I wouldn't think the comments in Westminster today and over the last couple of days, or any of the other inclinations I'm sure he's been getting, have moved to calm him. And so he is getting out while the going is even slightly good.
It's quite extraordinary that it's come to this. You think about even on Saturday, it feels like so long ago now, is the long forgotten Board of Trustees. How do they feel about this? You know, they've had the club yanked from them, haven't been given it to, so recently. No, but that's an amazing PR statement, Joe. I mean, if you weren't thinking too deeply about this and just taking everything he's saying there, he's forgiving the club the loans. He didn't say how much that is. It's 1.5 billion. I'm not sure if that's pounds or euros. Actually, I think it's euros, but it's a lot of money. How does that even work? You know, and then all the net proceeds of the sale go to charity as well. You know, this is it's remarkable, really, isn't it? Like that this is happening on such a high level. You know, and such a high, you know, such an expensive level as well.
Yeah, by all accounts, he's selling his monster mansion in London as well. He's selling everything he can sell at the moment, and there's talk that offers in by Friday.
Yeah,
it's like an eBay sale.
Yeah, an eBay sale. Yeah, except it's not, because it's you know, what are they putting the price at? It's something absolutely astronomical, 3 billion or something like that. You know, I don't know if he's going to get that for it, but you know, who's going to put that money together in a proper, talk about fit and proper test, but you know, how are we going to know who that is by that stage? I don't think it's going to happen. He also did say there that it's not going to be fast tracked, so who knows exactly what they're going to do in that regard. But I don't know, I'm just finding this, it's all moved so fast, and you know, it's so pales in comparison in importance to everything else that's going on. But when you think of everything that's happened since Abramovich has taken over Chelsea, from the Manchester City takeover all the way to the Newcastle takeover, Abramovich just seemed like the constant that would, you know, that he wasn't going anywhere, and Chelsea were always going to be the original money bags, and they were going to hold off on it. And now it just seems like it's just ended like that over the space of 2 weeks.
Extraordinary development, Richie.
Yeah, not unsurprising given the fact that the net was closing in on the likes of Alisher Usmanov and the likes of Roman Abramovich over the last few days. Sanctions from the UK government are imminent against oligarchs of their ilk. I'd imagine it's a very scary day for a lot of Chelsea fans, because this is like 19 years. For a lot of people, this is the guts of their fandom, has been spent with an open and blank checkbook. And if needs be, they could go out and buy whomever they so please. They could hire and fire managers at a whim, because there was always going to be the money to back them up. I don't think, regardless of who takes over now, is going to have the same laissez-faire attitude towards spending as Roman did over the last 19 years. But like Mick said there, it's a huge PR exercise, that statement, because I would love to check in with that charitable foundation in about a year or so's time and find out how much they were given and how much has actually been given to Ukrainian victims of this invasion of from Abramovich's country to Ukraine. I'd wager it's not that many. I'd like to know what the actual net figure of his of the takeover is going to be. Again, given the fact that he's forgiving 1.5 billion in loans, I wouldn't suggest that it's going to be a whole hell of a heap of beans. What it does do is mark, to some degree, a line in the sand for Abramovich, because it comes down so heavily on the side of empathy and sympathy for Ukraine that he has pretty quietly picked his side here, and is probably looking to, even though he's already got a visa or a passport for Israel, he's probably trying to build himself a life beyond the invasion in the West and away from the clutches of Mr. Putin.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I mean, he certainly didn't condemn the war, and maybe he feels in a statement about selling the club it's not the place to do it. But there is wiggle room there, in that the foundation will be for the benefit of all victims of the war in Ukraine. Now, I would think Russian soldiers could come under that heading, for instance. So there's a touch of wiggle room there, and there is no outward, explicit condemnation of what's going on. So it's difficult to know. And if you want to be more cynical again, he does have this offer and this interest from Hans-Jörg Weiss and Todd Boehly, who's a part owner of the Dodgers, and there seems to be haggling over the price. I mean, a statement like this is to prompt a bidding war. So
yeah, let's not 2.5 billion.
Let's not just celebrate this as exiting stage left. He is very much trying to say, okay, I'm probably going to have to sell this thing. I'm not happy with this price. So in this very nice PR statement, I am also trying to say I'm open for business here, everyone.
And I think
that price is going to drop day upon day and hour after hour, and pretty quickly as well, because nobody will effectively be pretty soon nobody will actually be able to do business with him. And secondly, nobody will want to do business with him. So he really does, regardless of what he says about not being fast-tracked, he has to get this done quick, which is why Rain Group in New York have been, apparently asked to have bids on the table by Friday.
Yeah.
Because he needs to get this done, and he needs to get it done soon. Because if not, Chelsea and Abramovich could find themselves in limbo with an asset he can't offload.
And you mentioned the price going down there. That's because I think, if Weiss didn't come out and say that Abramovich was trying to sell the club, I don't think he would have released this statement. I think he'd have much preferred to do this behind closed doors and get a secret deal at least somewhat over the line before this all became public knowledge. Now everybody knows Roman Abramovich is desperate to sell. It's a fire sale at Chelsea FC.
Yeah.
How much can we get it for a tenner?
Yeah, let's not fawn over this at all or celebrate this. I mean, the reasons he's selling are obvious to everybody. How he acquired his money has been well discussed across the 90s, and he's releasing this statement to prompt a bidding war and to hopefully ratchet up the price a touch. And of the 1.5 billion he's given to the club, I'm sure when he talks about net proceeds going to the charitable aspect here, I'm sure that his 1.5 billion will be looked after in some way. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. So I think let's all take a step back, because you read it at first glance and it's like, wow, Roman Abramovich, this is a hell of a move. I mean, be under none of us, sorry, I was going to say be under no illusions. I know nobody is. He's been hounded out here, and this is very much a self-serving move. That's all this is.
Yeah. I think as much as we're saying there, it's a brilliant PR statement. I think most people see through it, hopefully, anyway. I
just saw Miguel Delaney tweet that the fawning over this billionaire is a bit much. So I'm wondering if it's been received as a real act of generosity on Abramovich's part.
And I'd certainly like to even think back on what I was saying 5 minutes ago. And again, fawning over the PR wasn't fawning over the actual meaning of it, I hope, anyway. If I could be so crass as to bring it back to football, because it does feel almost a little bit crass at the moment, but Richie did make the point about Chelsea fans being a little bit scared at the moment. The only thing I'd say to that is, he's selling the European champions. He's selling how many? They've won 5 league titles, I think, since he took over. They are, without a doubt now, as much as people would want to say they're new money and so on, they are genuinely one of the biggest clubs in England right now. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world. They're, in London. They have a real support. They are a big, big name, current European champions. I think Abramovich has brought Chelsea beyond the point of needing Abramovich anymore to remain a big club. They won't have the open checkbook that Richie's talking about, and it's going to affect them. But I don't see them slipping back into the pack. I don't see them becoming, a Villa or a Spurs, even the Spurs. I still think they're a level beyond that.
I hear what you're saying, unless they get a Stan Kroenke type who's really not too bothered if they slip back to the pack.
Yeah.
And that's very possible as well. Hans-Jörg Wyss, I don't know much about him or whether he wants. I suspect if he's accumulated 4.3 billion and the LA Dodgers owner has accumulated 5 billion, they're going to run a tight enough ship as well. I think the Abramovich case was kind of touch unique,
No, absolutely, in terms of their ability to spend, but their turnover has become such now that they will always have money.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, in that they have become a big club. Will they be worried because they might slip back from that massive advantage they have over everybody else except for Man City? Yeah, they that is a concern, but I don't see it becoming them going back to being the mid-table club they were pre-2005 or 2004.
We should get started with the news round. Obviously, that's the first story. The news round is brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. So that's Chelsea. Richie, you might bring us up to speed with Usmanov, who people are less familiar with, obviously.
Yeah, Everton say they've suspended their sponsorship deals with companies owned by Alisher Usmanov. The Uzbek billionaire oligarch has had his assets seized this week by the EU over his links to the Russian President Vladimir Putin. His company USM holds title sponsorship of Everton's training ground at Finch Farm, and he also paid €36 million for the option of naming rights to their new stadium at Bramley Moor Dock. Usmanov's Megaphone is the women's team's primary shirt sponsor and the men's team's sleeve sponsor. Meanwhile, manager Frank Lampard has denied that Usmanov was involved in his job interview.
Yeah, well, those reports are inaccurate. My interview was with the board, with Mr. Mashiri, the chairman, Denise, the CEO, and others, but not Mr. Usmanov. So that's not accurate in that sense. And in terms of what it changes, in terms of the short term, I think we can see from the outside of how we reacted as a club on Saturday against Manchester City and the steps that we make, and those are not my decisions, that's club decisions from above me, that we are doing the right thing as a club. And in the short term I've been here, I've had no doubt that we were reacting the right way. In terms of how did it affect my training session this morning? No. Did it affect how we prepare for Boreham Wood? No. And that's just where it's at.
I mean, it's difficult to read through all these statements and know exactly what's going on. Like, I would presume if Usmanov's assets had been frozen, then Everton releasing a statement saying, well, we've put a halt on sponsorship deals with companies owned by Usmanov. I would think the freezing of the assets is the issue there, not Everton saying, well, we're not going to let the situation continue.
How much more money was coming from those sponsorship deals anyway? So look, I mean, and it's a murky enough relationship there in that, like, for example, this is a guy who's a sponsor of the club with no official title. Why are we even being asked whether Frank Lampard was interviewed by him? That I think that makes it murky enough to say that, it's a very strange one. I'm going to say something that I've never thought I would ever say, and definitely I've never said before. I feel sorry for Frank Lampard.
Jesus.
Look, this is a position that he's a football manager, whether we like him or not. It's kind of all he is, and these guys aren't signing up to these companies. Tuchel as well, obviously we talked about last night. These guys aren't signing up to these companies as like CFOs to sort of take on the owner's vision in the marketplace. They're signing up to be football managers of these teams. It's a little bit much that, and it just so happens then they are the most front-facing representatives of these clubs / companies, and then they have to go and answer these questions all the time. I don't think anybody reasonably expects Frank Lampard to know anything about Usmanov and his relationship with Everton before he takes over. And I think if you do, I think you're asking a bit much in a way that I don't think you'd ask yourself in the same situation.
So Farhad Mashiri is the owner. He's not Russian, born in Iran. family moved to England before the 79 revolution, but between 06 and 13 he is the chairman of Usmanov's mining company, and then he becomes chairman of USM, which is the Usmanov company, USM Holding. Now he's not as wealthy as Usmanov, but they're very much more than colleagues. They're partnership in effect, but Mashiri is very much to the fore, Usmanov very much in the background, and as you said, he has no stated position at the club. So I think
odd, isn't it?
Well, it is odd, and that's why there, those reports that he was involved in Frank Lampard's interview kind of caught the eye. Well, if he has no stated position at the club, why is he interviewing the next manager? And
Exactly.
there we go. So well, that's Everton. I mean, again, Everton have cut the sponsor situation. That's because Usmanov's assets have been frozen. That's the story there, and it was very much the talk in Westminster, though, Usmanov and Abramovich, and we'll get into that with Jonathan Wilson, who'll join us on the football show after 9. Richie, where are we going next?
To Beijing. The president of the Paralympics says he has had no other option than to allow Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete at the Winter Games. They'll participate as neutrals in Beijing following the invasion of Ukraine. Andrew Parsons explains it's the harshest possible punishment under its constitution. Paralympics Ireland had been one of the bodies calling for those athletes to be excluded from the Games, which get underway in China on Friday. Former World Boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko is in Kyiv to defend his country, and he told Sky Sports News today that any and all measures against Russia and indeed Belarus are welcome.
I'm actually proud of, and I know I'm talking to a sporting community, and this unity, the world's unity, the IOC, boxing federations, the UEFA, FIFA, Formula One, and so on, ban Russian teams from the games, from participation. I have nothing against the athletes, but they're representing as well the regime that is happening right now, and actually in some way in a connection with this war. And that's why any suspension just to stop this aggression, this senseless killing of innocent people, innocent Ukrainians, were probably one of the most peaceful nations in this world. We haven't started war ever with anybody, but come to our home and kill our men, women, and children. This is not a human, possibly any human could do. And as I said, senseless. And that's why there is never enough.
Okay, so that's Vladimir Klitschko. We'll move off the Russia-Ukraine theme for a moment then. Richie, what else is going on?
Liverpool continuing their quest for an historic quadruple this evening. They welcome Norwich to Anfield in the 5th round of the FA Cup, days after landing the Carabao Cup. And with that in mind, Jurgen Klopp has made 10 changes from the team that started at Wembley on Sunday. Only Jordan Henderson survives, Caoimhín Kelleher dropping back to the bench. There was a 7:15 start at Kenilworth Road. Chelsea in action. They're a football team as well, remember, and they're 1-0 down to Luton Town in the 5th round of the FA Cup. That goal coming inside the first 3 minutes there. Swords native Peter Kioso is playing at left full for Luton. And Southampton tonight entertain West Ham from 7:30. Shane Long and Will Smallbone both start for the Saints. Armstrong, Okaflex and Darren Randolph are both on the West Ham bench.
A few Leinster contracts.
Yeah, Ross Byrne, Will Connors and Max Deegan have all signed contract extensions with Leinster today. Connors is out, of course, for the rest of the season with a knee ligament injury, and they follow in the footsteps of Jordan Larmour, Tommy O'Brien and Caelan Doris, who all put pen to paper on new deals yesterday.
Wicklow footballers then.
Yeah, they require a new manager just 4 games into the Allianz League season. Colin Kelly stepped down last night with the Louth native citing a change in work commitments. Wicklow are bottom of Division 3 following 3 defeats and a draw, and they welcome Laois to Aughrim in 11 days' time.
Interesting story here around Formula 1 and the Russian driver Nikita Mazepin.
Yeah, this is something that I think could follow several sports, given the measures that have been imposed against Russian and Belarusian athletes around Europe during the course of the summer. Russia's Nikita Mazepin won't be allowed to race at Formula One's British Grand Prix in the summer. It follows a decision made by Motorsport UK to ban Russian and Belarusian competitors from the country. Mazepin is able to drive for his team Haas in the upcoming Formula One season, but only under a neutral flag.
Thoughts, Mick, on individual athletes? I think everybody's agreed on the teams.
Yeah, and look, we were talking about the Paralympics obviously beforehand, and you hear from Vladimir Klitschko, and it's very hard to argue with him, and like, you know, he's such an amazing ambassador for his country, and you know, it's a fair point, you know, it's not against the athletes, but they do in some way represent. But just when it comes to outside of like an Olympics or a Paralympics, where it is that it is a very national event, something like Formula One really isn't. Okay, they have flags beside their name, absolutely neutral flag, as you will for race for the rest of the season. Let's not, you know, there does have to be a thing if you can't go around representing this country after the you know, what they have done in invading and atrocities and so on and so forth. But, you know, Mazepin, I wonder, does he even live in Russia? You know, what is his connection other than being a person who happens to be from a place? And for him to be just banned like this, I'm just not 100% sure. And I say that as the truth. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not like I don't know whether they should or shouldn't.
Yeah, I don't.
But it just makes me question it a little bit.
Yeah,
the FIA. The FIA said they wanted to take more of a stance at that, like football teams would, in essence, that they play for a club. So like Mazepin, you know, plays for Haas in essence, and you know, Hamilton plays for Mercedes, etc., etc. So you can't necessarily ban the players, but whereby countries are being represented. So like a Russia ice hockey team or a Russia basketball team, or whatever, they can be ousted. But the Mazepin one is interesting, not least obviously because he's Russian, but because his dad is somebody else who has massive connections to Vladimir Putin. Dmitry Mazepin is a billionaire in his own right, owns, I think, Russia's largest potash company, who have up until, I think, this week, because it looks like it is changing, been the primary sponsor of Haas. And there have been whispers behind the scenes that Mazepin only got his seat on the Haas team because of who daddy was. So that's the interesting case where Mazepin specifically is involved. Now, he's the only case, I think, in Formula One that this applies to, but there are obviously other formulae and categories of motorsports that come under the purview of the FIA where this will be applied.
I've heard some talk about Medvedev. Like, it's an extraordinary thing where the tennis world number one is now Russian. And again, I'm with you, Mick. I don't know where I am in that spectrum. Yeah. I mean, I'm all for doing everything we can possibly do to shame the Russian state and make it a pariah state. And on any team which, say, represents the Russian Football League, or obviously the Russian country, it's a no-brainer. It's definitely a trickier one when it's Medvedev. There's not much he can do about being from Russia. He's no option here, whereas a football player could up sticks and move to a different country now.
But the point is, if you're saying that the message isn't getting through to Russian citizens what their leader is truly up to and what the real reasons for it is, you know, things like sporting achievement and pride in that comes from, you know, your compatriot going out and winning the Australian Open, you know, is a very important thing. And that message does get through then if they become, if that is taken away from them a little bit. So I do see that point, but I do completely agree with you. My instinct on it is, what's this got to do with Medvedev? You know, and if he's not allowed to play at Wimbledon or so on this year, you know, it's like, you know, he can't help being from Russia. And I you know, and do we put a litmus test on it where they have to denounce the war or something? You know, obviously we can't go down that road. So it's so complicated, but I think we have to talk about it being complicated and not just simplify everything.
Where are you in the individuals, Richie?
It's it's such a difficult one. I'd be inclined to go along with the FIA route, whereby saying that these people are representing teams and that they shouldn't necessarily be subject to the same sanctions as people who overtly are representing their nation. Like, you can't have Russia, for instance, compete in the Davis Cup at the moment.
Yes.
But you can have Medvedev compete in individual competitions, and that is the tricky, complicated fun. Like, not literally nothing in life is black and white like that, and nothing is easy, and there are no easy and simple explanations for a single thing. But this is probably the most difficult to kind of walk the line of, because of the nature of the people involved, the nature of the competitions involved. Individuals, I would struggle to see that the outright banning or casting out of the likes of Daniel Medvedev from international sport at the minute, but nor should they be able to revel in their national standard. Like, little things, like there are little tiny things that seem minuscule and stupid, but like Mazepin's front wing was a Russian flag, up until yesterday. Like, that's got to change. It's little tiny little things like that are all little nods and waves to people back home have to go. And that's where I think the likes of the FIA come in saying no flags and all that kind of jazz, because like any kind of national sport is a no-brainer, really, like you say.
Yeah. Okay, fellas, we're out of time. Mick, thanks very much.
Thanks.
Richie, thanks for this evening.
Nice one, lads.
The News Round on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.